We think about this stuff in kind of five pillars, right? And this is from the enterprise point of view, right? One, life cycle enforcement. Okay. Can we go and create a policy, right, where I issue something, I have the ability to maybe renew it, to expire it, to revoke it. Okay. It is constantly under my control, right? I will use again the notion of, something really important, which is, AI, acceptable use policies, right? A lot of companies are rolling out what we call AUPs, acceptable use policies. And, in our acceptable use policy, we say, don't do this, this, and this, right? We have one for Certer Inc., right? We have one for our own AI tools that we use. And one of our things in our acceptable use policy is do not take and use, company files in your own personal AI tools, right? If you're using, Gemini at home through your own personal account, you're not allowed to go and take company data and use it through that agent. I need a way to go and say that this person has acknowledged the receipt of this policy, and I need a way to go and expire it after 12 months. After 12 months, they got to go and agree to these things together, right? Second pillar, right, for the enterprise is I need to be able to verify these things quickly, right? I don't have time to go to Ben and say, Ben, can you email me that certificate of course completion from 6 months ago? I need to be able to verify these things quickly, right? You're seeing a little bit the QR code, right? When we issue digital credentials, it's done with a QR code and allows you to verify these things, right? Or if you're doing things at scale, just, an API of verification, right? And this is important because not only do we need an easy way to verify these things, ideally QR code or, an API to automate these things, it needs to be available 24 hours a day, right? Third pillar is what we talked about just previously, which is this notion of being ready for an audit, right? Everything's tracked and recorded, right? And this is, when I go and I take an online course and Harvard issues me my certificate of attendance. Well, of course, Harvard keeps all that information, right? But this is from the view of the enterprise. I work for, Certer Inc. Certer needs to know, what did Ben do? What did Dave do? What did all these other people do? How do I keep track of all these things? And it's not just for fun, right? Increasingly, these types of digital verifiable credentials are used for very important outcomes, right? Maybe I'm required by law to do certain things. Maybe there's some regulations, right? Maybe I have to go and do this training to make sure that the company is protected from misuse of AI tools, right? And when these things happen, we need to be able to go and produce that audit log quickly, and it needs to be complete, right? And the fourth thing, remember there's five on this slide, right? The fourth thing is, and this is getting so important over the last couple of years, is it needs to be machine readable, right? It needs to be able to integrate in with third-party systems, right? Your HR system, your learning management system, whatever systems, right? They all need to be able to talk to one another, right? And it needs to be done in such a way that one machine can talk to another machine, right? The rise of AI, just as a technology, has made these things so easy when that data is stored in a way that can be read by computers, right? So we can do things that are get the human out of the way in terms of the verification. Why? Because we want us to focus on the exceptions, right? I went through, I did my audit. I came up with, 3 issues. All the other stuff was worked out through this machine readable data. And now me, Ben, can focus on tracing and tracking down those 3 issues, right? And this goes into this fifth and final pillar, right? All this stuff needs to be done in a digital format so that it's portable. I also like the phrase durable, right? It's there to last, okay? If the company that issued the certificate went out of business, right? If, I changed my name, right? All these things need to be done in such a way, and I used the example earlier, it's not stored as a PDF file in Ben's Outlook from a company you worked with, 2 years ago. It's very easy to go and have a look and find these things out, right? No vendor lock-in. It's all, stored in a neutral way that's trustable, that's trusted. Because all these five pillars together, that's what builds the trust in this stuff. All right. I feel like I've been talking forever on this slide. But, the interesting thing is it's a big market, right? Everything I just took you through, which is the needs of the enterprise, right? These things are very quickly forcing companies to move away from this old school way to this new way of doing things. And look at the stats there, right? 60% of enterprises expected to adopt verifiable credentials by the end of 2026. It's 2026 today, it's this year. So a lot of companies are shifting to these things very, very quickly. Many of the people, and I can see it in the chats right now, many of these people work in roles for their company where the need for these verifiable credentials is growing very, very quickly. And they're finding out, I think, like most of us, in a painful way, the need is there. How to do it is actually becoming, harder, right? The problem's getting worse. The solution is getting more and more complex. And the ease of issuing certificates as PDFs and badges, that ease isn't the problem. The volume isn't the problem. It's the governance of these things that's becoming the issue. So, Dave, I set things up. Tell us about Search 365.
Absolutely. And like Ben has rightly mentioned, the world is actually looking for something which is a complete life cycle, right? You're talking about we're not talking about the tool only, you're talking about the credential ecosystem. Right. So let's say you have an infra, you want to drive an infra, you want to literally understand that how you control the end-to-end certification lifecycle. You try and introduce something which is more robust, something which is compliant, something which is having an institutional capability, and then it has a scale as well, right? So you figure out a way that you have something which solves the overall structural institutional trust. And I'll use the word trust because the credentials infrastructure is driving a lot of trust behind the scene. Because if you have the right system, which is making everybody accountable, you can, review it, you can regulate it, you can identify that there is a huge connection back to your current system because you don't want to move to the another system as well, right? The purpose is to stall these structural gaps, as what Ben has rightly mentioned. So we want to digitize, we want to make it immutable, and then we want to make it sure that it's fully compliant. And maybe you can help me with the next slide. That's what my next slide is actually. So you have an enterprise grade credential infrastructure, which is actually helping you talk about two most important part of it, right? The most important part is you have a life cycle and then you have blockchain authenticity, right? So first and most important part is that the capability the credential ecosystem is driving is the life cycle. That means you're actually automating the workflows, you're actually automating the renewal to revoke workflows. And revoke workflows are extremely important even you are using like amazing technologies like blockchain because we all are humans. We may make mistakes. And then we also want to revoke the issued certificate and the credentials which are getting expired or some reason we want to take it back, right? So important is that we are actually trying to enforce the system which is a policy driven system, right? We're actually providing the access which can be fully complied. So you have a role based control which actually making sure